Ahoy! Captain Flitton here. We are starting a brand new CKLA unit today. It is Unit 8, which is Treasure Island. So that is a story about pirates, and I thought that was only appropriate if I taught this lesson as a pirate. So I have my eye patch and braids and beads and my hook hand, and I'm gonna teach this lesson as Captain Flitton, your pirate teacher. So before we really get into this unit, I wanted to let you know that this is actually going to be my first time teaching this CKLA unit because it is our last one, Unit 8. It's the last one in 4th grade, and I didn't actually get to teach it last year because we ran out of time in the school year. So if you needed any kind of silver lining with the whole school closure thing, at least we get to do this unit because normally, we're in school and we're doing Oregon Trail or Pioneer Week, which we'll try and do some fun stuff virtually, but usually we're too busy to get to this unit. So at least we get to learn about Treasure Island and you get to see me as a pirate, at least for today. I don't know about every time we teach this a lesson for Treasure Island. But yes, so pirate teacher today. There's a lot of introduction information that we're going to go over before we actually get into reading our story, our first chapter. So let's get started. My hook hand is going to give me difficulty today, I think. This is a pirate you're probably familiar with, Jack Sparrow from Pirates of the Caribbean. I feel like I did a pretty decent job, right? I mean, I even did my eye makeup because he's got some pretty intense eyes there. Pretty decent. Okay, so he's just gonna hang out up here. Okay, so Treasure Island is an adventure story. It is based in the 1700s, and the setting is somewhere you may not be familiar with. So this is a little zoomed in world map here, and let's see, this is gonna be hard with my hook hand. We're up here in Washington. Up here, maybe my hook can, okay. All right, there we go, good job, hook. So we're up here in Washington, and the story takes place partly in England over here, purple country, and then partly, oh, come on, hook hand. Okay, so partly in England, partly in what is called Spanish Main. And so there's Florida here, and Mexico, Texas would be there. So these countries right in here, like the Caribbean and Central America, the top of South America, this is where part of our story takes place too. Okay, so that's part of the setting, England and Spanish Main. But then we know setting is where, but also when. So the book itself was written by Robert Louis Stevenson, and he was actually born in Scotland, which is the red country on the map there above England. But he wrote this book in 1883. So I wish we had our timeline, still our big blue one at school. We could show you on our timeline with our own selfie on it. But that would be right about here. Okay, sorry, you're way zoomed out. But the story itself takes place, Treasure Island, in the 1700s, okay? So he wrote the book over 100 years after the time period he was writing about, okay? So we've learned some things this year that happened around the time of the 1700s. Our unit about the American Revolution for CKLA covers that time period, but just in a different part of the world, okay? So, the colonies and the French and Indian War, the American Revolution, everything that went with that was right in here during that same time period, okay? So Jamestown was settled, Pilgrims land at Plymouth, and then over here in 1754, the French and Indian War begins. So right in that middle section is when the time period is for Treasure Island, okay? So before all that happened, It was a time of exploration. So European settlers were exploring, you know, North America, Central America, South America, and discovering new lands, finding gold and spices and all kinds of stuff. So because there were so many ships in the sea, piracy was a big deal. So pirates would attack and rob ships to steal their stuff, okay? And that still happens today. They don't look like this, or I mean, they probably didn't back then either. He's a character, right? So pirates are still an issue today. They still steal things from ships that they attack and rob, but back then it happened like all the time because there were so many ships coming from England to transport back and forth, because all the merchant ships were headed back and forth from the Americas back to Europe. Okay, so they would board the ships, attack, and rob those ships. Okay, so it was a big problem in the 1500s, 1600s, 1700s, all those centuries. So during that time period, there was a huge rise in trade. My hook hand is going to switch hands. From the European countries to the Americas and back. So pirates would rob those ships. Okay, so we're just going to add to our thing up here, and we'll keep our timeline. So you guys have a couple of different things that we've given you for this unit. So you have your workbook, the bigger one. We know these ones you can write in. It has your name on it. If you're in my class, I wrote your name on it. But you also have the little reader, okay? So it's a big deal that you keep this one in good shape. The little reader, the thin one. This one is the story itself. So it's like a textbook that you cannot write in, that you have to keep in very good condition, because you have to return this back to the school and we need to reuse it for next year's fourth graders and the year after that and the year after that and forever, okay? So these were never kept in my students' desks. We would keep these in our front cubbies just because I didn't want you to get it squished. So at your house, try and keep these in really good shape because they need to be used for years in the future, okay? But this is where our whole story is. So on this one, I'll say open your reader 2, and that'll be the page numbers. And then this will be your workbook. Open your workbook 2, okay? And it's tricky because if you've watched any of my past like CKLA or math videos, the camera is like looking down on the pages, but sometimes we look at like pages in the workbook, pages in the reader at the same time. So these videos might be a bit fumbly, a bit awkward. I might be like moving the camera around a lot to show you guys stuff, but it is what it is. Pirate teachers, not the best at technology, okay? So those are your materials. Before we get into reading our story, we are going to look at some vocab just about a ship and what life on a ship would have been like. So I have this little picture and it has the vocab words, but it's really hard to see them down here, and it'll be hard for you guys to see the picture in the video. So it's actually on page 107 in your readers also. So if you flip to 107, there's a better picture for you. I'm going to do the same thing. Hopefully you have your materials open and ready. So there's a big color picture right there for you. So that explains the different like sides of the ship, because there's all different names and different vocab for old ships like this, okay? So this was a common type of ship that they would have used back then for transportation and for trade. It was called a schooner, okay? So if we look at the picture on the ship, there's different sections, and this is just like, I don't expect you guys to be like experts in ship vocabulary, not a big deal, but it's just as we read through the story, as we read the chapters, they're gonna say things and it's like, go to the fore of the ship, and it's like, I don't know what that means. So we're just gonna go over a little bit real quick, just so you know, as we go through the story, if you hear those words. There's also a page in your workbook. So page 211 in the very back has the same picture. It's just in black and white. And then the page after that is all the ship terms. Okay, so it has the vocabulary word and the definition on this side. So if we ever say something like mast or anchor or anything like that in the story and you can't remember what that is and you want to know what it is, it's on page 213. Okay, and then there's a little bit on the back too. So 213 and 214 might be important pages for you. So if you have post-it notes, you might want to like tag that one like I have here. And that way you can flip to that page easily to find those words. Okay, so 213. So there's a few words we're just going to go over really quick with our picture. I wanted to show you guys just so we're aware before we get into our story, okay? And I'm going to try really hard not to make these videos like an hour, hour and a half long, because if you think about our schedule at school, our CKLA time was after lunch. Like we had reading trail for 15 minutes, but then it was just after lunch all the way until math success. So it was like 11:45 all the way until, I mean, it was like an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes every single day we had for CKLA. So I don't want the videos to be that long, but this is going to be a lot like, remember our Middle Ages unit, how long those lessons were? This is very similar, like the workbook style. So there's a lot of grammar and morphology pages and stuff. So I'm going to try and move quickly through it. Okay. So anyway, here is our ship picture. So toward the front of the ship would be, the direction would be 4. Okay. Like F-O-R-E, not like the letter or the number 4. 4 would be the front of the ship. Okay. And the back of the ship would be aft. A-F-T, aft. So 4, aft. And then the right side of the ship, if you're looking forwards, if you're looking to the fore of the ship, the right side of it would be called starboard, the starboard side. And the left side of the ship would be called port. Okay, so it's not right and left, it's starboard and port. And the way that I remember that one is left has 4 letters, L-E-F-T, and so does port, P-O-R-T. Okay, so that's how I remember that one. And then starboard's just the other side, right? So, and then it also has the picture, our little diagram has a lot of different things on the schooner too. So like the masts are the giant posts in the middle of the ship that hold the sails. And the sails were very important on these ships because there was no power, right? There's no motor. They would catch the wind. The sails would catch the wind and that would transport them, okay? That would move them. There was a main deck on the ship. That's just like this part that you could see exterior. That, you know, that's where they would do a lot of the work. But down below the ship, a lot more happened than I think people realized. Then there's some more things like anchor and stuff. So the next couple pages after this, so on page 108, it shows the interior of the ship and different sections of the ship and what would happen in those areas inside. Okay, so this one's interesting. This is the galley, which is like the kitchen. So somebody was like the cook on the ship and it would happen below the main deck, so all on the interior of the ship, and that's the galley. The captain's cabin is where he, you know, slept and did his map, you know, looked at his maps and decided where to go, things like that. The berths were the living quarters, so they have these little hammocks in the picture, and that's where all the other sailors would be sleeping. So if you want to look through those, you can. If you want to look through the other little labeled parts on our diagram, you can check that out, okay? So that's all in the reader. And this reader, it is an abridged version of the actual book, Treasure Island. So abridged means that it is shortened and edited just so that it's appropriate for 4th grade readers. Not that, like, they don't change the story at all. All the elements of the story are the same. They just shorten it so that we get, you know, the story, we understand the story in this much instead of like the actual book, however long it is. Okay, so it's just a little bit shortened and edited. but all the, you know, characters is the same, the style, theme, plot, everything else is the same. It's just a little shortened. It's not like excerpts though. We get the whole chapter, they've just changed it and shortened it. Okay, so we're not skipping chapters, which is nice, because the vignettes or excerpts that we've seen before when we've been reading, like the Small Steps, the polio story, way back in Unit 1, we just saw random excerpts, like random chapters, so we'd be missing big details from those chapters that we didn't see. So this is nice because we get every chapter, they're just shorter. Okay, they've taken out some information that wasn't necessary. So today we're reading chapter 1. And I think the way I'm going to do it, I was thinking I would just like read it and you could watch me read it, but I think I'm going to rotate the camera so that you can see down on the page. I would still like you to track with me as I read it if you're going to listen to me read it. If you want to skip ahead in the video, you can do that. Read it by yourself, always an option, okay? You can read through chapter 1 on your own. Before we even get into that though, we need to go over the vocab words. So before every chapter, we're going to preview the vocab words. We're just going to go through them. Sorry, my dog's breaking in. We're going to go through the vocab words, talk about their definitions, what parts of speech they are, and then we'll read the chapter, okay? And then do any workbook pages associated with that chapter. Oh, before we do that though, forgot there's going to be a funny part. So, I'm not going to be doing this part, but you guys are. So open your workbook to page 1. And there's a page like this, looks like this on page 1. It says, what does a pirate look like? So we're going to draw a pirate from the 1700s based on some pirate stereotypes. So stereotypes are like what you imagine a pirate would look like, but not a real pirate. Like, what's a cartoon pirate, basically? Like, what are some things that everybody believes about pirates that may or may not be true, okay? That's like, you know, like a stereotype about girls is that they're not fast or not good at sports. And that's insane because I'm faster than any boy, right? So stereotypes are just things that people believe, but they may not be true. So stereotypes about pirates, there's a few. Let's see, for one, they have hook hands and peg legs, right? You see pictures of pirates and they have like the post for their lower leg. They don't have, you know, a calf and a foot and an ankle and everything. They just have the stick coming out of their pant leg like that, that they walk on, or they have hooks for hands. And I didn't have a hook. This is a potato masher, so oh well. But that is a stereotype about pirates because it was a dangerous job being a pirate. Okay, it's very violent, it's aggressive, so they might have gotten in fights and sword fights or gotten them blasted off by cannons or who knows what. But that is a stereotype about a pirate. Another is that they would have exotic pets. So I'm sure like most pirate stories you've read or seen, they had like either a parrot. Okay, Trigger, you're not going to be able to sit under my feet while I teach as a pirate right now. They had either a parrot or like a monkey for a pet, right? So most pirate stories I know had a parrot, but in Pirates of the Caribbean, the, I don't know the characters' names in the movie, but the other pirate, the bad guy in the first one, he had the monkey, right? So that is a stereotype just because pirates would go to these exotic places, and I don't know if it's true or not that they would keep parrots or monkeys as pets, but they would go and get exotic stuff from those countries to take back home or to use for themselves. So it was just thought of that maybe they, you know, had exotic pets like that. Another one, well, you know, the hats, you know, the little symbol, this is called the Jolly Roger. That was on their flags and stuff. Oh, eye patches. That was one. I was pointing to it. Eye patches. So I actually did not know what the eye patches were for. I was wrong. I thought that the eye patch was kind of like the hook for a hand or a peg leg because maybe they lost their eye in some violent battle, right? That's what I thought it was for. I had no idea. It's actually to help with seeing in the dark. So the main part of the ship, the main deck, you know, was outside. It was bright out if the weather was nice. But then as soon as they go below deck into the cabins and stuff, it would be dark. No electricity. If they had lamps or lanterns, you know, then it'd be lighter in there. But they would save one eye in this like dark eye patch to keep it used to the darkness. So then as soon as they went downstairs into the cabins below deck, they would flip the eye patch to the other side so that this eye was fresh and could see in the dark better. And then, you know, you wouldn't be having to adjust. Okay, so you can try that at home. You can try and cover one eye, or, you know, make an eye patch like I did. This is a sock, by the way. Cover one eye for a long time, like 5 minutes or more. Cover your eye and then try and like switch back and forth. It looks very strange. Like one eye is, it takes a second, but one eye is more adjusted to the darkness than the other. So that's what the eye patch was for. Who knew? Didn't know. So based on those stereotypes, based on, you know, maybe pirates, you know, from movies or, you know, animated movies like Peter Pan, you get to draw a pirate right here. You can put as little or as much detail as you want into this. You can color it. I don't care. Do whatever you like here. You can draw a stick figure pirate if you want, but try and incorporate some of those stereotypes. So the eye patch, the peg leg, the hook for a hand, the monkey or parrot, you know, whatever you want to draw here, fine with me. And if you want to pause the video right now and draw it, go for it. If you want to draw it afterwards, that's fine too, but I'm going to continue. I'm not going to like sit here for 10 minutes while you guys draw a pirate, right? Okay, so after that is vocabulary. So I'm going to have to adjust my camera, and I don't need to see in the dark, so, ugh. See, and now my vision's so weird. Okay, try it, it's really cool. All right, so I'm gonna move my camera so that now you can see the page. I need to kick my dog out of the way because he's trying to sit under my chair. He looked so offended. Okay, so on this page is the vocabulary for this lesson. Try and zoom in a little. Okay, it is page 3 in my workbook, and every time we read a new chapter, we're gonna go over the vocabulary for that chapter beforehand. In my class, we were very used to doing this. We would do it every time we'd read out of the reader. Okay, so first word, squire. What word? And then that's where you say squire. So squire is a noun. And I feel like we might have heard this word back in like Unit 2 when we were talking about Middle Ages. I don't know though, I don't remember. Squire. It is an English gentleman who owns a large estate or piece of land. Okay, squire. Second word is bearings. That's a noun. Bearings are the location or position of something based on information from a compass. So bearings is like, nowadays we know like coordinates or GPS coordinates. Okay, so it's the location based on a compass. Okay, sorry, I'm crooked trying to figure this out. Okay, number 3, saber. A heavy sword with a sharp curved edge. Saber, cool. Next word is cove. It's a noun. It is a small area along a coast sheltered by hills or mountains. Okay, so it's where like land meets the sea, but there's mountains and stuff around it, sheltered by hills or mountains. Next word is company. Company is a noun. It has a couple different meanings. It could mean visitors or guests, like we know, like you have company over, those are your visitors. Could also mean companionship, but I think the way that we're gonna hear it most often, a company is a ship's crew and officers. Okay, so the people that worked on a ship, that was the ship's company. Okay, next word is spyglass. Spyglass is a noun. It's a small telescope used to see things in the distance. Okay, usually they were like the telescoping ones that would like pop out and extend and get bigger. And they would use those to see things really far away on the sea. Next word is seafaring, and that's an adjective, our first adjective. It means working, traveling, or living on the sea. Okay. Number 8 is stroke, which is a noun. And there's a couple different meanings of stroke, but this meaning is a sudden loss of feeling or consciousness brought on by a lack of oxygen in the brain caused by a broken or blocked blood vessel. Okay, so if somebody has a stroke, it means that they had an injury to their brain which caused loss of feeling, consciousness, lack of oxygen happens in your brain. So some people die from having strokes. Okay, next word. I'm very curious to see how we're going to use that in our story. Next word is magistrate, which is a noun. It's a local government official who has some of the power of a judge. Okay. Next word is loot. Okay, loot. Oh, you guys are going to know that from Fortnite, huh? Things that have been stolen is the loot. Okay, I'm picturing a treasure chest. You're probably picturing a llama. Next word, mutiny. This is my favorite vocab word. Mutiny is a noun. It's a rebellion or uprising against those in charge on a ship. So this reminds me of when we had the word anarchy, and in my classroom we would yell anarchy and wave our arms around and things were crazy and there were no rules. So it's kind of similar to anarchy. It's when the crew and the company of the ship didn't like maybe the captain's orders, didn't like his leadership. They would rise up, rebel, and take over. They would take charge on the ship, okay? So, funny word. I like that word, mutiny. Hopefully none of my students ever mutiny against me. Okay, so these are our vocab words for this chapter, chapter 1. If you need to leave this page open, that's fine. If we come to a vocab word in our story, they will be bolded, and then you can pause and look back to see what it meant, okay? So we're gonna start reading chapter 1. It begins on page 2 of our little readers, okay? So in the little reader that you're gonna be very nice to, we're starting on page 2. Try and zoom in as much as possible without cutting off the page. Okay, here we go. Track in yours or read it by yourself and fast forward until I'm done reading this chapter. Chapter 1, The Old Sea Dog and the Black Spot. I'm gonna use this to track. Is that okay? All right. Squire Trelawney, Dr. Livesey, and the other gentlemen have asked me to record the story of Treasure Island, keeping nothing back but the bearings because there's still treasure there. Therefore, I take up my pen and go back to the time when my family ran the Admiral Benbow Inn, and the old seaman with the saber cut on his cheek came to stay with us. Okay, pause. So whoever the narrator is of our story is writing out the story of Treasure Island, and it says, leave nothing back but the bearings. So he's going to give all the details of this story except for the locations because there's still treasure there. They don't want to give away the location, okay? So he's going back in time, like metaphorically back in time to tell us a story when his family ran the Admiral Benbow Inn. So that's, an inn is like a hotel nowadays, right? And an old seaman with a saber cut on his cheek that came to stay with them. So he had, remember, a saber is the big sword, so he had a sword cut on his cheek. I remember the old seaman plodding to the inn door, dragging an enormous sea chest behind him. He was a tall, nut-brown man with gnarled hands and black, broken nails. He rapped on the wooden door and called for a drink. He drank it slowly, savoring the taste as he looked out at the rugged cliff top. This is Handy Cove, he said. Much company? Not much, I said. Well then, he said, this is the perfect place for me. I'll stay here for a while. I'm a plain and simple man, he continued. Bacon and eggs are all I need. There we go. You can call me Captain. Then, as if by magic, He threw down 4 gold pieces. "Tell me when I've worked through that," he said, looking fierce. Okay, so that means, well, he met a new character called the Captain, and it described him in the previous page. He wanted all the bacon and eggs he could get for 4 gold pieces. During the daytime, in sunshine or in driving rain, the old captain hung round the cove, keeping watch with a brass spyglass. In the evenings, he sat beside a roaring fire. We soon learned to let him be lost as he was in his own private thoughts. Every day he would ask if any seafaring men had gone by on the road. At first, we thought he wanted company of his own kind, but we eventually realized he wanted to avoid them. It wasn't long before I understood the reason for this odd behavior. He took me aside one day and promised me a penny on the first of every month if I would keep my eyes peeled for a seafaring man with 1 leg. "Let me know the moment he appears," he growled. How the man with 1 leg haunted my dreams. On nights when the wind shook the house and the surf roared in the cove, I would see him in 1,000 forms. Sometimes his leg would be cut off at the knee. Sometimes it would be cut off at the thigh. In my nightmares, the man with 1 leg chased me, calling out my name, hopping along on his good leg. He was always just a matter of inches behind me. I paid pretty dear for my monthly penny in the shape of those terrible dreams. Okay, so the captain is looking out for this guy with 1 leg, and our narrator, who we don't know his name yet, is supposed to keep watch for him and give the captain warning if he ever comes, but our narrator is having nightmares about the 1-legged man. Okay. Often, in the evenings, the old captain would sing a wild sea song and force the inn guests to sing the chorus. On these occasions, it seemed as if the house was quaking as the words echoed within its walls. The old seaman's stories about bloodthirsty pirates, ferocious storms at sea, and wild deeds on the Spanish Main terrified our guests. He must have lived among some of the most wicked men ever to sail the seas. Okay, next page. He stayed for several months and never offered us any further payment. Whenever my father mentioned his bill, the captain would raise his voice and stare ominously at him until he retreated. I am sure the terror in which my father lived greatly hastened his death. Okay, so this captain guy is not paying for his stay at the inn. And whenever the narrator's dad mentions this to go and ask for payment, the captain just scares the dad. And the dad is always living in fear. And where it says it greatly hastened his death, that means that it brought upon his death faster. So he might have died faster because he was always so scared of the captain. One morning, while the captain was out walking and talking in the salty sea air, another seafaring man arrived. I was setting the breakfast table when the door opened and the man stepped in. He was a pale, rascally-looking creature, and I noticed he was missing 2 fingers. "Is this here table for my mate Bill?" he asked, pointing to a table that had indeed been set out for our secretive guest. It was not a straightforward question. He uttered those words with more than a hint of sarcasm. I told him the table was for a man who called himself the captain. "Has he got a nasty scar on one cheek?" he inquired. "Yes," I replied. "Well, that would be my mate Bill. Is he here?" he continued. "He's out taking a stroll," I explained. The stranger announced that he would wait for his mate to return. Then he stood inside the door, peering out like a hungry cat, waiting for a mouse. After a while, the captain strode in. Okay, so this new guest, whoever he is waiting for the captain to come in. And if he's peering out like a hungry cat waiting for a mouse, that doesn't sound like a good thing. I have 3 cats, and whenever they find a mouse, they are not very kind to it. Bill, shouted the stranger. The captain spun around. He had the look of a man who had seen a ghost. Black Dog, he gasped. Okay, so the new character's name is Black Dog. Next page. There we go. And who else? Returned the other. Black Dog's come to see his old shipmate, Billy Bones. Now look here, hissed the captain. You've managed to run me down. What's your business? I'll have a drink, said Black Dog. Then we'll sit down and talk square like old mates. They sat down, and for a long time I could hear nothing but low mumbling. Gradually, their voices grew louder until the interaction became a cacophony of unpleasant exchanges. This was followed by an explosion of crashing sounds. The chair and table went over, a clash of steel followed, and then a cry of pain. The next instant, I saw Black Dog in full flight and the captain in hot pursuit. Both men with sabers drawn. Blood streamed from Black Dog's left shoulder. At the door, the captain aimed one last tremendous blow, which would certainly have struck Black Dog had it not been intercepted by the inn's signboard. So a big wooden sign got in the way. He was about to swipe him with his sword. Black Dog, in spite of his wound, appeared over the hill in half a minute. The captain stood staring like a bewildered man. At last he turned, staggered, gasped for breath, and grabbed the door with one hand. Jim, he croaked. Water. I'm guessing Jim is our narrator then, and he's calling him. I ran to fetch him water, but as I fumbled with the jug, I heard a loud crash. Running back, I saw the captain lying on the floor. Immediately, I heard my mother's footsteps on the stairs. Moments later, she was standing beside me. Together, we gently raised the captain's head. It was clear that he needed a doctor. So we sent for Dr. Livesey. Then, as carefully as we could, we moved the captain into the parlor. Shortly after Dr. Livesey arrived, the captain opened his eyes and looked about. Where's Black Dog? He mumbled. There's no Black Dog here, the doctor said. You've had a stroke. Now lie back and rest. Dr. Livesey drew some blood and the old sailor fell asleep. He needs to rest for at least a week, the doctor said emphatically. Another stroke will surely kill him. Later, when the captain woke up, his first words were, Black Dog. Jim, he moaned, you know I've been good to you. I'm pretty low and deserted by all. You'll help me, won't you? But the doctor, I began. So it sounds like Jim is trying to say, the doctor wants you to rest for a week. We can't do anything. Doctors, what do they know? He growled. What does that doctor know about seafaring men like me? Somewhat reluctantly, I agreed to help him. So reluctantly means he agreed to help him, but he didn't really want to. He's not happy about having to help him. When I offered him water, he greedily gulped it down. Aye, said he, that's better. Now then, did that doctor say how long I'm supposed to lie here wasting time? A week at least, I said. Thunder, he cried. Out of the question. They'd have the black spot on me by then. He attempted to sit up, but fell back, weak and helpless on the bed. And then, after further contemplation, he spoke to me again. Jim, he said, you saw Black Dog? He's a bad 'un, and there's worse than him after me. I hope I may get away from them yet. If I can't, and if they put the black spot on me, it's my old sea chest they're after. You go and see that doctor and tell him to send all hands, magistrates and such, to the Admiral Benbow. Tell him Captain Flint's men are here, or all that's left of the old crew. And Flint's first mate. I was Flint's first mate, and I'm the only one who knows the place where he hid his loot. But don't tell the doctor unless they get me with the black spot, or you'll see Black Dog again. Okay, so he was Captain Flint, whoever that is, Captain Flint's first mate, and he knows where all this hidden treasure is. At that moment, he paused before continuing. Or a seafaring man with one leg. Keep an eye out for him above all, he concluded. But what is the black spot, Captain? I asked. That's a summons, mate. Mutiny. Keep your wits about you, Jim, and I'll share with you equals upon my honor, he continued. Okay, so the black spot basically means you're done for. They've decided you are a goner. And he said that he would share equally all the loot with Jim. His voice grew weaker as he said this, and soon he fell into a heavy sleep. I should have told the story to the doctor, but my poor father died quite suddenly that evening, which naturally put all other matters aside. The day after my father's funeral, I was standing at the door, full of sad thoughts, when I saw a blind man slowly walking up the road. He wore a green mask over his eyes, and he tapped the ground with a stick. He was hunched, as if from age, and wore a hooded sea cloak. As he drew near, he called out, "Will anyone inform a poor blind man who has lost his sight in the defense of England, God bless King George, where he may now be?" "You're at the Admiral Benbow Inn," I explained. "I hear a young voice," said he. "Will you lend me your hand and lead me in?" This sounds like a trick. I held out my hand, and the blind man gripped it like a vice. I struggled to escape, but he pulled me close. "Now, boy," the blind man said through gritted teeth, "take me to the captain." Uh-oh, it's a trick. "But," I protested. "Take me in now," he commanded. He gave my arm a twist that made me cry out in agony. I've never heard a voice so utterly cruel and cold as that man's. I obeyed him without further hesitation. We walked together toward the room where the captain was resting. "When I'm in view, cry out, 'Here's a friend for you, Bill,'" he instructed me. As I opened the door, I repeated his words in a trembling voice. The captain attempted to rise, but he was too weak. Then I saw the blind man slip something into the captain's palm. Okay, and this illustration on the bottom. So here's Jim. Here's the blind man who's tricking Jim into taking him in. And here's the captain, not looking so good. And he gave him something, put something in his hand. Don't know what that was. Okay. "Now that's done," said the blind man, and with incredible nimbleness, he scurried out of the inn and back along the road. I could hear his stick tapping as he hurried away. The captain gazed at the piece of paper the blind man had given him. 10 o'clock, he cried. "That's 6 hours from now. We'll do them yet." With that, he lurched forward and managed to get to his feet. Then, quite suddenly, he reeled about and put one hand to his throat. For a moment or two, I watched him as he swayed from side to side before crashing to the floor. I hurried to assist him, but it was too late. My mother descended the stairs and saw the old seaman lying on the floor. I explained to her as best I could what had just happened. After much discussion, we decided we should open the captain's sea chest and take the money he owed us. First, we had to retrieve the key from the captain. Okay, so captain died. Jim and his mom are like, yeah, we're gonna get the money that was in his little treasure chest there. The captain lay on his back with his eyes open and one arm outstretched. By his hand was the slip of paper, marked with the anticipated black spot. Scrawled on it was the message, "You have till 10 tonight." I searched the dead man's pockets, but could not discover the key to the chest. "Perhaps it's round his neck," suggested my mother anxiously. I opened up his shirt, and there it was, hanging from a piece of string. I cut the string with the old captain's knife, and then my mother and I raced upstairs, intent upon opening the captain's sea chest. Oh, and that's the end of chapter 1. So, putting my bookmark in my book. I am not folding over the pages to mark where I finished because I want to keep my reader nice. And that was all of chapter 1. So, back to our workbook. And I'll zoom back out a little bit so you can see the full workbook page. Okay, so I hope I paused and explained anything that might have been confusing on those pages. I've never read the actual story of Treasure Island, so I'm pretty excited to be reading it. But there are some definitely confusing things in it. So, okay, so here is our workbook page with the vocab on it. So we're going to go through and quickly go through the rest of Lesson 1's pages. Some of them I just have to explain. There's nothing we have to do with them, okay? So the back of that is a blank page. And then this one on page 5 is the character chart. So it's a couple pages, front and back, but this is the chart we're going to come back to after we read each chapter, because a new character is going to be introduced to us, and then we have to give details about that character, okay? So we'll come back and do this one in a second. After that, on page 7, activity page 1.5, it is a take-home page, and you're already home, and we just read this. So these you can do. I'm going to leave this one optional. If you want to reread this part of the story on these next couple pages and then do the activity, you can do that. You do not have to, okay? Some of the take-home pages we will do together in the lesson. Some of them we will not, okay? So this one we won't. After that, another take-home page, but this is the glossary for the entire Treasure Island reader. So every chapter's vocab words are right here on these pages in alphabetical order. If you want to tear these pages out, the glossary pages, and staple them and keep them, you know, with your workbook and reader to just have on hand, you can do that, or you can leave them in here and flip back to this page if you need, okay? So there's a couple pages of that. And then vocab for chapter 2, so we don't need that yet. So I'm going to go back to my character chart. It is on page 5. And if you want to put another sticky note on this page, because we'll always have to come back to this page after we read a chapter to fill out key details about the new characters. So if you want to keep that like tabbed like that, you can do that. Kind of like in past units when we had like the volcano chapter, the geology unit, we had to go back and like cut out the pictures and add the evidence. And back in unit 2, Middle Ages, we had those like mystery pictures. That was pretty fun. So this is one of those where we just always come back to this and fill out information about the characters, okay? So in this chapter, we only really met 3 characters so far. We're only going to fill out information about 3 of these guys. Okay. All right, so chapters 1. We read chapter 1, and we met Billy Bones, who was captain. We read chapter 1 and met Black Dog, the guy that came in and attacked him very suddenly, and Jim, the narrator of our story. Okay, we're not going to worry about the rest of them just yet. So, key details about Billy Bones. What do we know about him? What do we want to fill out here? Okay. Let's see. He's an old seaman, it said, with a scar on his face. Okay. He has a sea chest, and he knows where some treasure is. Sorry, camera's shaking a lot. Knows where more treasure is. You could say he got in a fight with Black Dog, or fought with Black Dog. Black Dog at the inn. Oops, sorry, cutting off some of it. And then I'm just gonna say he dies at the end of chapter 1. Interesting. They killed off a character awfully suddenly in this book. Okay, so that was all about Billy Bones, Bill, Captain. Next is Black Dog. He is the guy that came and fought, right? It said he was missing 2 fingers. You know that? Okay. Comes to the inn to find Billy Bones. Came to the inn to find Billy Bones. I think he came for the treasure, right? That's what I'm inferring, but I guess I don't know for sure. I'm just gonna write they fought. Okay. That's all we know about him right now. I don't know anything else yet. Okay, and then last is Jimmy. I didn't know his last name was Hawkins yet, but now we do, I guess. Jim. He is the narrator. Very important. We are learning this story through his point of view. He is a young boy. Or well, I guess it didn't say exactly how old he is, but I'm picturing him as like, you know, maybe your guys' age, slightly older. His father died. Died in chapter 1. Sad. He helps run the inn. And I'm gonna say he seems naive. I'll explain that in a second. Okay, and then I'm gonna leave space for him because I think we're gonna learn more about him later on. But naive means gullible, like he'll believe anything kind of person, okay? So, you know, that's kind of trustworthy. That's a good quality, but naive is, you know, trustworthy to a fault, okay? So that's it for the activity pages in this lesson. So if you need to pause here to finish writing this down, do that quickly now, pause. And then I'm gonna flip you back around. Okay. All right. Okay, so that was lesson 1. It was almost an hour. Sorry, I try to keep it under an hour at least. So I did that. I'm under an hour. But I'm thinking most of these lessons are going to be right around an hour because we're going to have vocab, a chapter to read, and then eventually we're going to have grammar and morphology pages to do, and spelling words. Oh man. So these are going to be long lessons. If you want to break it up and do like part of it in the morning, part of it later in the day, do that. But try to keep to 1 lesson a day. So try and finish all of lesson 1 in a day. Try and finish all of lesson 2 the next day because we need to move through this, okay? That's what we would be doing at school. So I believe in you. You can do it. I'm gonna go do pirate things. I don't know. I'll go bury some treasure in my backyard. Me and my pirate dog. Ooh, she should be a guest star soon because she only has 1 eye. Could make her an eye patch. Okay. Hope you guys enjoyed your first lesson of Treasure Island, and I will see you back here in the next video for lesson 2. Bye.